Helen Yee here with Eyes on the Game in Fight Island, being joined by the one and only, the future UFC Hall of Famer, Mr. Daniel Cormier. Now, first off, congratulations on your newborn. Such a beautiful family.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, Luna Rose Cormier. Yeah, my baby. I miss her so bad being out here, but she was doing good. She came early, right? I wasn't even supposed to be in Fight Island. My baby was supposed to be born October 10th, but she came September 9th, right? So she made a decision. She's very strong in her thoughts, and she got here, and now I'm here on Fight Island, missing her dearly, but I get to see her every day on FaceTime.
And I'm glad that you guys got to go to the pumpkin patch before heading here.
Yeah, we did. We went to the pumpkin patch. It's one thing in this world where everything is so different. It's one thing that you can do with your children that's outside and reminds them of the way things should be. So for Daniel and Marquita to get that normalcy that we do every year was great. And they're decorating the house now without me. I watched them do pumpkin carving on Zoom the other day. So just trying to stay involved as much as I can while still getting back to work.
Well, you are such a great father and have accomplished so much also in your athletic career. I mean, from the Olympics, Strikeforce champion, champ in the UFC, SB winner. I mean, you've done it all. When you reflect on your career, which moment are you most proud of?
It's a number of things. I think anytime you win the UFC championship, right, and you get the adoration of the crowd and you get the belt wrapped around you by Dana White or Anthony Johnson the first time I won the belt, it always stands out above all. But I remember making the Olympic team and getting to hug my mom because I'm from Louisiana, right? And we don't make Olympic teams and we don't become world champions, not where I'm from. And so to be able to do those things was amazing. And it's hard to pick one, but I guess if you have to, it would probably be the night I beat Miocic, right? Because now there could never be any question. Because when you hold two belts, that will never be forgotten. That will play on every highlight package the UFC ever does. That will be on every intro to the show. It will never be wiped away. I've always said this in my career. I said, we come and go, but your legacy will always stay. So that's why it meant so much for me to leave one behind that will be remembered.
Well, speaking of champ, since I am talking to one, and you're such a great analyst, you've spoken very highly about Khamzat Chimaev. You said that you see him being a champ in the future, but right now, besides Darren Till, because he has a fight booked coming up, he seems to have a bit of trouble finding an opponent. What do you think about that situation he's in?
Well, it's because he's so good and because he's not well known yet, right? It's a risk to fight a guy like that. A guy that doesn't have that big low number next to his name, but you understand that his skill set, it's so dangerous for anyone. I believe that he gets a top guy. I think that he's going to end up fighting a guy like Wonder Boy. And then after that, he'll be locked into the top 5. I was one of the guys that wanted him to kind of take it slower. But after watching him dominate in the way that he has to this point, there is no reason to take it slow. He needs to be in there with the best fighters in the world.
Well, Michael Chiesa recently said that he can see why some of the ranked fighters are turning him down because the risk outweighs the reward. What do you think of that?
It's the truth, right? Because when you're a guy that... So I fought Patrick Cummins, right, on a week's notice because I was making my light heavyweight debut and I had cut all this weight and there was no way I was not going to fight. If I was to lose to Patrick Cummins as the number 2 ranked heavyweight in the UFC, it would have been a nightmare for me, right? But if I was to win, as I did, it didn't really do anything, right? Because I was supposed to beat him. I think that's what people see when they look at Chimaev, right? If I win, I'm supposed to. I'm the guy that's been here. I'm the guy that's fought for the belt. I'm the former champion. But if I lose, now I lost to this guy that's just getting here. It doesn't really weigh, but you don't know what Khamzat Chimaev is going to turn out to be, but today it seems risky.
Well, you mentioned Wonder Boy, and it looks like he may have turned him down. So who makes sense for him to fight next?
I think Wonder Boy is the fight. I really do believe that that's the fight for Chimaev. But anybody in the top 10, guys want to fight him. Neil Magny said he'd fight him. I don't know if that fight's been offered, but publicly he said he'd fight him. So I guess make that happen. But it just this whole welterweight division is a bit of a mess right now, right? Especially with the champion getting hurt and being out of his defense in December. Now Gilbert Burns is kind of waiting. So now you got the two best guys kind of sitting. You got Colby and Masvidal, two guys that are willing to fight anytime, gonna fight each other at some point. Fingers crossed that is a 5-round fight, right? We want to see those two fight for 5 rounds. Please be a 5-round fight. But then you got Leon Edwards, who's kind of just waiting, been waiting for a minute. You have Tyron Woodley, who's now out of the equation for a little bit after the rib injury and the losses that he's taken. You have Wonder Boy, who's kind of waiting. You also have Neil Magny, who has now made himself a player in this division after beating the former champion Robbie Lawler and the performances that he's had since he came back to the UFC. It's a very deep division, but it's not moving as quickly as we would like it to move as a fan.
Well, speaking of deep divisions, another one, the lightweight division. You've spoken about your friend, your brother Khabib. He has that fight against Justin Gaethje coming up. It looks like Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor, they've been kind of going back and forth, and Michael Chandler being that replacement or alternate for Khabib and Gaethje. Where does Tony Ferguson stand?
I think Tony Ferguson is still in the mix, right? But I think I think they all need another fight, which is why I believe it'll work itself out. Michael Chandler's the backup fighter for the title. He's the number 1 contender. But the moment the fight happens, he's not anymore, right? So that's like a weird deal, right? He's going to have to fight again. So I think Tony Ferguson makes sense for him in a UFC debut because if he wins, now he's a viable challenger for Khabib. Conor and Dustin makes sense because if Conor can win, it puts him on a 2-fight streak and the biggest fight in UFC history back on the table with him and Khabib. Dustin wins. Now Dustin is right back in the running, right? So it all makes sense, but it all makes sense at the very top. Whereas at welterweight, we go 10 down, right? We name 10 guys. At lightweight, I believe it's Khabib here, right? Then it's Justin, who is fantastic, and I'm so honored to call their fight. Justin, Conor, Dustin, Tony, Chandler, and then everybody else is kind of like that tier below.
Dan Hooker.
Dan Hooker. I forgot about Dan Hooker, who's a beast, right? Like Dan's in the mix, right? So you have all these guys that are just vying to get to that top spot. So this is a fun division. But look, this is a fun division with a dominant champion, though, right? So you do all these things to get there, but then you get Khabib at the end of it, right? Like, oh, yeah, here's your prize, Khabib Nurmagomedov. You know, like, come on.
And lastly, speaking of champions, you've talked about Israel and Jon Jones. Obviously, they keep going back and forth. And you've mentioned that you think Izzy will beat Jon. How do you think he beats Jon?
I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that he'll beat Jones. I mean, look, man, you can't just say that you're certain guys like that will lose, right? Yeah. I'm just saying if forced to make a pick right now with the way Adesanya has looked lately and the way Jones has looked lately, I would tend to lean towards Adesanya, especially if Jones is forced to stand with him, because we've never seen a kickboxer at that level. I mean, Thiago Santos is a good kickboxer, but make no mistake about it, he is not Israel Adesanya. Dominic Reyes is a good kickboxer, but he is not Israel Adesanya. And those guys were able to give Jones a ton of problems. Adesanya, if he's able to keep this fight standing, which he has proven time and time again that he's able to do, is a problem for not only Jon Jones, but all the way up to heavyweight with Stipe Miocic. If he has to stand with Israel Adesanya from heavyweight down to 185, it's a problem because he's that good in that one particular skill, the striking. He's that good in striking, and now he's striking with 4-ounce gloves. He's a dangerous guy. He's a dangerous guy for everybody.
Well, thank you
Maybe not Francis. Maybe not Francis. Maybe not Francis, because Francis is knocking people's heads off. So maybe not Francis, but all the rest of the heavyweights got their hands full, even with Adesanya.
Very well said. Well, thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.